Li Yue's eyes were filled with anger. In the past she did not see Bewitching being this indifferent. Was Bailey Hongzhuang really so charming? After Bewitching and Bailey Hongzhuang got together, they refused the temptation of others. With a slight turn, Li Yue could not help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang. The lips of Bailey Hongzhuang were curled into a sneer, ridiculing Li Yue and her way of trying to provoke her. It is doomed to fail. Bailey Hongzhuang, don't be too proud. Li Yue said coldly. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly at the moment, the smile the same as always. Li Yue, you care so much about me. Don't you worry, when the crown prince comes, I will also suggest this to him. Listening to the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, Li Yue's face turned ugly and she suddenly felt a bad premonition. Was Bailey Hongzhuang going to use the same trick? As soon as she thought of this, Li Yue's heart clenched. His Royal Highness had never shown her any affection, so how could she give such an enchanting woman as Miaoling to his Royal Highness? Bailey Hongzhuang, don't even think of that, it is impossible. Li Yue growled. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged indifferently, it didn't matter if she did it or not. Seeing the behavior of Bailey Hongzhuang, Li Yue's heart was full of doubts. No matter what, she couldn't let Bailey Hongzhuang use the same trick to avenge her. Li Yue immediately turned around in an attempt to get Miaoling to leave. She had to have Miaoling away from the palace before the crown prince arrived. However, just at that moment a palace eunuch's voice sounded. The emperor is arriving. The queen is arriving. The crown prince is arriving. The sharp voice made Li Yue pause her steps, her heart could not help but feel a sense of panic, especially when everyone stood up to bow respectfully to the emperor and the others. The emperor, the empress, and the crown prince sat on the main platform right in front of all the people. The emperor and the empress sat in the center, the crown prince was seated slightly to the side. We have seen the emperor, the empress and his royal highness. Everyone respectfully called out. Xianyuan Etienne had a warm smile on his face, but the aura he exuded was putting everyone in the hall under pressure. Today we are gathered at a celebration banquet to celebrate the crown prince, Chen Wangye, and Chen Wangfei. The Qing dynasty has such good fortune. Xianyuan Etienne's gaze could not help but fall on Bewitching. After seeing him again half a year later, he was shocked. Even though the appearance of Bewitching had not changed much compared to the past, the sparkle in his eyes were completely different. The confidence and aura that was surrounding him was one that only peerless geniuses could possess. Now when he saw Bewitching again, he could not help but feel a bit of awe in his heart. Listening to Xianyuan Etienne, the hearts of the officials were somewhat doubtful. They had thought that this celebration was purely for the sake of His Royal Highness. How could he bring Chen Wangye and Chen Wangfei into it? Although Chen Wangye and Chen Wangfei were now students of the college, their status in the imperial city was not good. One was the waste of the general's household, the other was an abandoned Wangye who was rumored to be an illegitimate child. Why did the emperor suddenly change his attitude today? It is not only Xianyuan Etienne but also the crown prince who could not help but look at Bewitching. In fact, today's banquet was held exclusively for Bewitching, and Bewitching was the real main character. Li Yue's eyes landed on Xianyuan Huan's body and the black eyes were filled with love. She had been admiring Xianyuan Huan for a long time, and now she had become the future crown princess, but she had been separated from Xianyuan Huan for such a long time while he had been at the college. Today she saw Xianyuan Huan again, and her heart could not help but beat rapidly. After exchanging a look with Jiang Jinying, Xianyuan Huan slowly walked from the podium where they were seated towards the front of Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching. Li Yue saw Xianyuan Huan's approach, and only thought that perhaps he had seen her before when he arrived. Her heart was beating even more rapidly and her eyes were filled with love and hope. She would never have thought that Xianyuan Huan would not look at her at all, and instead look directly at Bewitching. Chen Wangye. Bewitching's eyebrow rose slightly, and he seemed lazy and comfortable as he looked at Xianyuan Huan in front of him. Since Xian Yuanhuan had an important position, everyone were carefully noticing his actions. However, when they saw that Xian Yuanhuan was standing in front of Bewitching, but Bewitching was still sitting and not had any intention of getting up, their faces changed. Chen Wangye is too bold, His Royal Highness has come to him in person, how can he not rise? Even if there is a relationship of students between them when they are at Sanglan College, this is not the college but the royal court, he has to follow the normal etiquette. Xian Yuanjing had a hint of coldness in his eyes as he said, Bewitching is really looking for death. This Xian Yuanjing was the one who, together with Xian Yuanhuan, had pushed Bewitching down from the 3rd floor, and he ended up hanging in the air. Because of that incident he lost his face. For a while he dared not even appear in sight of anyone. Because of this incident he hated Bewitching more and more. Do you need something, Your Royal Highness? Bewitching did not have a good impression of Xian Yuanhuan. The humiliation he had received in Fengbo country was mostly from him. How dare you have such an attitude towards His Royal Highness, do you not want to live? Li Yuyue spoke up, the crown prince was to be the monarch in the future. An illegitimate child dared to slight the crown prince like this, it was simply looking for death. Xian Yuanhuan was currently thinking about how to apologize to Bewitching when Li Yuyue's sudden words scared him. He carefully observed Bewitching, and upon seeing that he was not angry because of it, Xian Yuanhuan coldly told Li Yuyue, Miss Li, this matter has nothing to do with you. Your Royal Highness, Chen Wangye's attitude is a crime, he should be dragged out and beaten with 50 blows. Li Yuyue's voice was unable to hide the eagerness within. The previous episode had made her very unhappy, and now that Bewitching was acting so arrogantly, she wanted to take the opportunity to beat him. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved upwards, it seemed that Xian Yuanhuan had already known the origin of Bewitching. Now he was here to ask for forgiveness. Li Yuyue's obstruction at this time was tantamount to finding trouble for him. Your Royal Highness, Crown Prince, she said I should be beaten with 50 blows. Bewitching's smile was easy as he ridiculed Li Yuyue and repeated what she had said. What I said is already light. You are making such a big act of rebellion. Li Yuyue stood up, her eyes once again a little smug, who let Bewitching refuse to toast, only to be forced to drink as punishment, she was going to make Bewitching regret it. Xian Yuanhuan could not help but swear, this Li Yuyue was really an idiot. Xian Yuanhuan was doing his best to try and please Bewitching, but all Li Yuyue was doing was keeping on talking about punishing him. Slap. The crisp slap landed on Li Yuyue's face. His face was full of disgust as Xian Yuanhuan shouted, I told you to shut up. Did you not hear it? Everyone present had their jaws dropping in shock, it was simply too strange a response from the Crown Prince. What Li Yuyue said was not bad, but His Royal Highness actually slapped her face in front of everyone. What happened to His Royal Highness? Why is he so polite to Chen Wangye? I don't know, it is really puzzling that he will beat the future Crown Princess for the sake of Chen Wangye. Li Yuyue was beaten by this slap, a burning pain came from her cheek. She could not believe what was happening in front of her eyes. An unspeakable sense of shame began spreading in Li Yuyue's heart. First she was scorned by Bewitching, and now she was slapped in the face by His Royal Highness. She had become the object of ridicule. Li Qingqian's face was difficult to look at. He could not understand what Li Yuyue had done to provoke the Crown Prince's anger. Your Highness, how can you do this to me? Li Yuyue's eyes were red and filled with tears. However, Li Yuyue had been hit on the face just before, and now that she was speaking, the veil which she had been wearing quietly fell to the floor. Wow! After seeing the true face of Li Yuyue, everyone were in a daze, their eyes filled with incredulity. They saw that Li Yuyue's white face was covered in dense freckles, the original beauty had been covered, and it was not only because of the mark after the slap. Where was the most beautiful girl in the city? It was simply an ugly woman with freckles. I heard that Miss Li had a lot of freckles on her face, but I did not think it would be very serious. Now that I have seen it, it is indeed very ugly. How can someone look like this and be our crown princess? What if she is seen by the other countries? They will think we have no beautiful women. No wonder Miss Li has always worn a veil since then. This kind of face is really unappetizing. The eyes of everyone fell on Li Yue's body. Since way back everyone had been curious about Li Yue's face, but now that they had seen it they felt shocked. Li Yue had not noticed that her veil had fallen before she heard the people talk around her. Her expression was suddenly filled with embarrassment, her cheeks became red and it was difficult to endure the shame. Xianyuan Huan was also stunned. Even though he had suspected that the problem with Lu Yue's face was serious, he had not thought it would be this serious. Having such a face, he was afraid it was impossible to even eat rice. How was he supposed to accept it? Li Yue quickly picked up her veil and put it on her face. Facing the eyes of everyone she wanted to find a place to sneak into. So Miss Li turned out to look like this, she really can't be the crown princess. Jiang Jinying said after a moment of surprise. That is true, Xianyuan Yutian was sullen as he nodded his head and his gaze was stern when he glanced at Li Qingqian. Li Qingqian's face changed when he felt the anger of Xianyuan Yutian. In order to avoid his daughter being abandoned as a crown princess, he had always concealed the matter while looking for a cure. He never thought that today it would be completely exposed, and he was worried that the emperor would not easily spare him. Li Yue quickly returned to her original seat together with Miaolin, and her head was lowered, but she could still feel that everyone's gaze was still focused on her. Xianyuan Huan did not care where Li Yue went, and turned back to Dibei Chen. I want to apologize to you for what I did before. Next Xianyuan Huan bowed to the emperor, his attitude was completely sincere. I was stupid before, I was truly ignorant. I humiliated you, but I hope that you can forgive me. When everyone saw that Xianyuan Huan was sincerely apologizing to Dibei Chen they looked as if they had seen a ghost. It was unbelievable. Xianyuan Huan was the crown prince, how could he apologize to Dibei Chen? Cough, Xianyuan Jing was directly choking on his tea, his eyes widened. What was happening today? Was the sun rising from the west? While everyone were horrified, they all could not help but look at the emperor and the empress sitting above. However, both of them were indifferent. Obviously they approved of the actions of Xianyuan Huan. It was indeed a ghost. Dibei Chen looked indifferently at Xianyuan Huan. He never spoke, but in the silence Xianyuan Huan's forehead was oozing cold sweat. If you feel that everything I have done can't be forgiven then just kill me. I hope that you can forgive my mother and father, they were also forced and were helpless. Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised and her eyes had a strange color. At this point she thought that at least Xianyuan Huan was still somewhat manly. When the voice of Xianyuan Huan fell, the entire hall was silent. Everyone opened their mouths, and one could hear a needle drop to the floor. Anyone who saw this could understand the seriousness of the situation. If there was no reason, Xianyuan Huan would never do this. When thinking about it carefully, everyone understood that Dibei Chen was not the illegitimate son of the emperor. Otherwise Xuanhuan Yuan had no reason to be lowering himself like this. As a result, the identity of Dibei Chen could only be terrible. Bailey Haoshuan's eyes widened and the situation changed so fast that he could not accept it at all. It was hard to understand, is the identity of Dibei Chen even more noble than the crown prince? Then, what about Bailey Hongzhuang, the wife of Dibei Chen? Dibei Chen looked at Xianyuan Huan for a long time, Xianyuan Huan's whole body was feeling powerless, and then he finally said, what you did to me, I do not care, but I can't forgive you for what you did to my lady. Xianyuan Huan's childish actions, he had never really taken them to heart. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the excellent man that was in front of her, and she could not help but feel moved deep in her heart. He was so thoughtful, and a different kind of talent. He had especially returned to the Fengbo country for the sake of getting her justice. All along she thought that Dibei Chen had returned to Fengbo to cleanse the humiliation he had suffered here, but now it seemed that she was wrong. In the heart of Bei Chen, he had never looked at Xian Yuanhuan's previous humiliation of him, he just ignored the humiliation he had suffered in Fengbua. Xian Yuanhuan was shocked. He had thought that Bei Chen would not let him go, he had never expected that he would say such a thing. Looking across the table, he saw the moving and affectionate feelings in the eyes of Bei Hongzhuang. He suddenly understood why Bei Hongzhuang had picked Bei Chen between the two of them without hesitation. You have to know that at first, Bei Hongzhuang did not know the identity of Bei Chen. Bei Chen was just a disabled Wang Ye who had nothing at all, while Xian Yuanhuan was a high-ranked prince. At this point, he could not compare to Bei Chen, so the only woman who had taken root in his heart had become Bei Chen's. In that instant, everyone's eyes were condensed on Bei Hongzhuang. Even if the emperor, the empress, and the crown prince did not say it, they already understood that Bei Chen was not a simple figure. Obviously Bei Chen was here to help Bei Hongzhuang. Li Yuyue was pale like paper. At this moment she finally understood why His Royal Highness had just taken that attitude towards her. The identity of Bei Chen is above the crown prince. How can this be? An incredible feeling spread in her heart. At that time the disabled prince that was ridiculed by everyone had now turned to such high. She and her father had together framed, but also pushed Bei Hongzhuang to such a high position. The most important thing was that the Wang Ye was so fond of Bei Hongzhuang. First he had threatened and said that he only wanted Bei Hongyuan, now he had returned to the Fengbua country just to make her get rid of her bad breath. What kind of doting was this? How awkward. Li Yuyue's hands in her sleeves were clenched into fists, the nails were deeply embedded in the palm of her hand, drawing blood. All that Bei Hongzhuang has now was all contributed by her. She wanted to let the Bei Hongzhuang fall into the dust, let everyone trample upon her, never would she have thought that Bei Hongzhuang was now a pearl that shone brightly. Li Qingqian's face was also extremely ugly. This was a huge unbelievable contrast. The chicken became a phoenix. This rare phenomenon actually appeared in front of him. Bei Jintao stood up in shock, his face was filled with nothing but shock. He had already regretted it very much. Now that he saw Bei Hongzhuang and Bei Chen, he simply regretted it so much that he did not even know what to say. He was a real idiot. He could not imagine that if he always treated Bei Hongzhuang well, the current glory would belong to the general estate. With the existence of a son-in-law like Bei Chen, even if he wanted the entire country of Fengbua, was that really difficult? However, everything that should have belonged to him had been ruined by his own hands. Bei Haoshuan was also stunned at this moment, and there was only one idea in his mind: how was it possible? Xian Yuanhuan turned around and looked at Bei Hongzhuang. He had indeed made a pair with her for many years. Once upon a time, Bei Hongzhuang had looked at him with eyes of love, but he had hooked up with Bei Yuyan, and even hoped that Bei Hongzhuang would die. Next, under the horror-filled eyes of everyone, Xian Yuanhuan straightened his back in front of Bei Hongzhuang. He had hurt Bei Hongzhuang. In order for the wedding to be withdrawn, he had repeatedly insulted her and also regarded their marriage as a joke, a stain that could not be washed off. It is also because of this attitude that Bei Hongzhuang's life was so difficult. If it was not for Bei Hongzhuang who saved him back when he was sick, then he would already have died. Therefore, even if it is awkward, he was willing. I am sorry. Xian Yuanhuan's voice was loud and full of apologies. He used to be arrogant, but after experiencing all the things that followed, he also felt that he could not go on like that. Although he was now kneeling in front of Bei Hongzhuang, he felt that his life was finally straight. The crowd was stunned, the entire hall was deadly silent. If the scene was passed out, it was likely that no one would believe it. Xian Yuanjing's legs were also wobbling. At the beginning he had ridiculed Bei Hongzhuang, now that she was back, he did not know if she wanted to deal with him. Bei Hongzhuang was calm and looking at Xian Yuan with an indifferent gaze. This man originally disgusted her. If it was not for Xian Yuanhuan, the previous Bei Hongzhuang would not have committed suicide and would not have been swallowed up. Therefore Xianyuan Huan owed the life of Bailey Hongzhuang. Later on Xianyuan Huan changed a few ways. Biali Yuyan died in her hands, but Xianyuan Huan did not say it out, not wanting to create troubles for her. After experiencing many things, she was also a little bit indignant, but the rest was just indifferent. She can see that Xianyuan Huan was truly remorseful. The previous things had already happened and he couldn't change it even if she wanted to. Nowadays she no longer cared about this. The only thing that mattered to her was the man who was willing to shelter her from the wind and the rain. As for everything before, let it end here. Xianyuan Huan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, and if she picked to kill him, he would not say anything in defense. Looking to the side, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the emperor and the empress up high on the platform. Both their faces were filled with apologized. Although Bewitching was treated like this in Fengbo country, they were helpless. Forget it, just get up, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips parted slightly. Her eyes were calm and indifferent, as if Xianyuan Huan in front of her was merely a stranger whom she had never met before. The officials present heard the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, and they were relieved. Fortunately Bailey Hongzhuang chose to forgive the prince, otherwise it really became hands-on. They did not know how to clean up the mess. However, Xianyuan Huan's heart was even more heavy after seeing the indifference in the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang. If she hated him, at least he still had a place in her heart, but with the current attitude, it was obvious that she regarded him as a stranger, not even worthy of hate. There was a bit of surprise in Bewitching's eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang had been humiliated so much over the past few years, but now it was easily resolved. Even so, Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, and he understood her. The reason that she had made this decision was not because of the other people but because she genuinely had put it down. After really letting it all go, there was no need to care about it. Even if Xianyuan Huan died in front of her, she would feel nothing. Perhaps this scene was more desirable than if she had angrily punished everyone. If she had been immersed in the original pain, Bailey Hongzhuang would not have been happy. Only after being able to put it down would she be able to look forward to a new tomorrow. Xianyuan Huan also slowly stood up, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang who was so generous and had let him go. He was even more ashamed when thinking about it. Although he was bigger than Bailey Hongzhuang, he could not compare to her. It was awkward. Suddenly the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang fell onto Li Yuyue who was not too far away. Since, at this point in time, Xianyuan Huan was not looking for trouble with her, she could leave him be, but Li Yuyue wanted to make her unhappy, so it would not be her style, unless she fought back. Feeling the gaze of Bailey Hongzhuang, Li Yuyue's heart sank slightly. Why was she so unlucky? If she had known that the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang was completely different from what she had expected, then she would never have dared asking for trouble today. But she was no prophet, so she could not have expected it. I think that the future crown princess is too ugly, not at all suitable for you. It is better to abandon her. What do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curved slightly, as they were drawn into an enchanting smile when she looked at Xianyuan Huan. Since Li Yuyue wanted to be a crown princess, she will ensure that she did not become a crown princess. Since she was intending to destroy the feelings between Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching, there was no way she was going to forgive her. As soon as it was said, everyone's eyes landed on Li Yuyue's body. The face underneath the veil was rapidly paling. Hearing the words, Xianyuan Huan nodded his head without hesitating. Okay. Li Yuyue's body trembled and her face was as pale as a corpse's. She had waited for such a long time to become a crown princess. Now, just because of the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, her dreams had been shattered, the efforts had been turned into nothing. However, everything was done by herself. If it was not for her initial intention of provoking Bailey Hongzhuang today, perhaps the situation would not have become this serious. In my opinion, her father has hidden it for so long. Bewitching interjected and Li Qingqian's face immediately changed. An unspeakable panic spread in his heart. His daughter was no longer the future crown princess, but he could not afford to let it implicate him. However, Xianyuan Yutian did not hesitate after hearing Dibei Chen's words. Come here. Take away the position of Li Qingqian as our prime minister and let him become a civilian. The guards immediately went into the hall and took off Li Qingqian's black silk hat. He was then unceremoniously dragged out of the hall. Dibei Chen, while he was being dragged out, Li Qingqian was unwilling and was shouting, but for what he was saying, no one was in the mood to listen. Since Li Qingqian had been demoted to a civilian, Li Yuyue naturally had nothing else to do at the banquet. She too was driven out of the hall. This was the last time they entered the palace in their lifetimes. Li Yuyue kept yelling, her eyes were filled with hatred for Beili Hongzhuang, but although she was yelling, no one cared. The royal banquet ended with everyone shocked. Xianyuan Yutian sealed the information and everything that had transpired stayed hidden, no gossip was spread. Dibei Chen's identity was extraordinary, and they all understood the seriousness, and after what happened at tonight's banquet, they all took it for granted that they had to stay silent. For some time, although the military and civil officers were unaware of what had happened, they still told their families that they should not offend the Chen Wangye. After the banquet ended, Beili Hongzhuang and Dibei Chen went to General Beili's home. In Beili Hongzhuang's memories, this place had never brought her even 1 ounce of joy, and all of the memories were unbearable. She wanted to go here, for this would be the last time she came back. After today she would end all her relationship with the general. Beili Jintao had not expected that Beili Hongzhuang would come. He blinked a few times, and was so shocked that he failed to believe his eyes. He wanted to say something, but he did not know where to start. Beili Jintao knew that Beili Hongzhuang had already been very good to him, and had to thank her for not making trouble for him at today's banquet, otherwise his end would have been just as bad as Li Qingqian's. Beili Hongzhuang, how come you are here? Beili Haoshuan did not dare to disrespect Beili Hongzhuang at this moment, otherwise as long as Dibei Chen said the word, his life would be gone. Beili Hongzhuang faintly glanced at Beili Haoshuan, but she ignored him and turned to Dibei Chen. Wait for me here for a while. Dibei Chen nodded slightly, go on. He already knew Beili Hongzhuang's plan. The reason that she did not make any problems for Beili Jintao today was because she had grown up in the general's house, and also mainly because of Qin Yayun. Beili Haoshuan's face was a bit ugly when he realized that Beili Hongzhuang was ignoring him, but he still dared not speak. General Beili, let's go inside, Beili Hongzhuang said slowly. Listening to the name that Beili Hongzhuang called out, Beili Jintao knew that she had not forgiven him. His face looked slightly lost, and it was completely different from usual. Okay. Inside the house. Beili Jintao was seated opposite Beili Hongzhuang. He was now very uncomfortable whenever he faced her. This was a change that he himself had not even realized. The room was silent, and the atmosphere slightly tense. Beili Hongzhuang was the first to open her mouth and say, General Beili, I am here to tell you something. Go on, Beili Jintao nodded his head. I am actually not your daughter. When the words came out, Beili Jintao's face suddenly changed. He was confused, and the difference between the old Beili Hongzhuang and the new was too obvious. Was the woman in front of him not the real Beili Hongzhuang? Who are you? Beili Hongzhuang waved her hand and explained, General Beili, you've misunderstood. I really am Beili Hongzhuang, but I am just not your child. In the beginning, Mrs. Qin wanted to win your affection by pretending to be pregnant. Truth was that she wasn't with child, I am just a child she picked up and raised. How is this possible? Beili Jintao looked at Beili Hongzhuang with shock, he could not believe that what she said was the truth. The look on Beili Hongzhuang's face was casual as she continued, you had not seen her since the moment she said she had become pregnant, so the lie was not seen through. In fact, I also first learned about this when I was sorting through Mrs. Qin's heirlooms. Her diary stated everything very clearly, I believe it cannot be fake. Beili Jintao sunk into silence. The words of Beili Hongzhuang were simply impossible to refute. In fact, Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, when Qin Yayun was pregnant he did not care too much before she was born. If Qin Yayun intentionally concealed this matter, then it was entirely possible to do so. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang said, Qin Yayun did not need to write such a lie in her diary, so there was only one explanation: it was the truth. Even so, I have grown up in the general's home for more than a decade. I hope that General Bailey will be able to live a good life. I believe that the royal family will treat you well, on behalf of Di Beichen's reputation, but you and I will return to being strangers. The feelings of Bailey Hongzhuang were calm and indifferent. For Bailey Hongzhuang there really was no emotions left. In the past 10 years, although they had the name of father and daughter, they had not had even the slightest bit of relationship. If she did not care about Qin Yayun, how could she have let them off? When her voice fell, she had already stood up. She was not speaking anymore and went straight out of the house. She and Bailey Jintao had become strangers, there was nothing to say anymore. Bailey Jintao looked at the back of Bailey Hongzhuang. He had not seen the diary left by Qin Yayun, so he was not sure whether or not she was speaking the truth. However, he was able to confirm that in the future neither he, nor Bailey Hongzhuang, would have any connection. All of this was ruined by his own hands. Bailey Haoshuan had seen that Bailey Hongzhuang had left with Di Beichen and could not help but enter the house and ask, "Father, what was it she said to you?" Bailey Jintao waved his hand. It was as if he had gotten old in an instant. "She won't be coming back again." As soon as the words were said, Bailey Haoshuan was also stunned. Today Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were so famous. He too wanted to steal some of their limelight. Listening to the words of his father, he understood that Bailey Hongzhuang was now completely unrelated to their general's home. His wishful thinking was broken just like that, and the expression on Bailey Haoshuan's face became ugly to behold. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang walked on the street. There were very few pedestrians. On the roads, the two figures were shrouded in moonlight. Di Beichen's big hand gently clasped over Bailey Hongzhuang's and his gentle voice suddenly sounded in her ear, "How are you feeling?" The lips of Bailey Hongzhuang curled into a smirk. "You asked me how I was feeling at the banquet. Also there, with everything that has happened." Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. He only wanted her to be happy, but he could feel her sorrow. "I was naturally very happy at the banquet. The humiliation suffered in those years has all been completely vented." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled lightly. From now on she would no longer be the former trash of the general's household who was ridiculed and trampled upon. Instead she had become a person that everyone looked up to. At the general's home, I did not belong there, but I am after all human, and my heart is a bit more touched by this matter. She had all the memories of the original Bailey Hongzhuang, but even so, she was not the original Bailey Hongzhuang and could not really feel how she felt. Therefore she just pitied the previous Bailey Hongzhuang, and sighed. She did not know how she would feel if she knew of everything that had happened. For herself, she is still full of hope. The future is what mattered the most to her. Di Beichen's hand was holding Bailey Hongzhuang's tightly, his voice was filled with relief and adoration. "In the future, I am by your side, it is enough to just think about me." The next day the sun was high on the cloudless sky. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had left Fengbo country after they had cleaned up. The place did not have much meaning for them now. Kanglan College only had 1 month of vacation, and they had already been away for more than half a month. It was time to return to the college. Ji Wenbin, Dong Sairu, and Du Tianxua all came to say goodbye. Although no one had said anything they could still feel that it would take a long time before Bailey Hongzhuang would be coming back. After waving goodbye, Bailey Hongzhuang turned away. Ji Wenbin looked at the two figures who were riding their horses, and his heart was filled with blessings for their happiness. He did not know when he would see Bailey Hongzhuang again. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen returned to Kanglan College, the school was filled with life. Many students had returned, and even more had never left in the first place. He Mu suddenly appeared in front of Di Beichen. "Young master." Di Beichen nodded slightly. what is it? The time He Mu had been with him was not short. Unless something had happened, He Mu would not have directly appeared in front of him and Bailey Hongzhuang without permission. Hearing the words, He Mu could not help but glance at Bailey Hongzhuang in hesitation slightly, his expression showing uncertainty. Di Beichen just waved his hand, say it. There should be no secrets between himself and Bailey Hongzhuang. He did not need to hide. Something happened at the sect. Miss Han was very dissatisfied with what happened in the ruins, and those people are about to begin moving. There is a little bit of helplessness in his expression. When the young master was staying at the college, the people of the sect had long since been very vocal. In addition, we have heard about the Jiupin Ziji, but I am afraid that if the little lord does not come out personally, it will be difficult to take it back. Di Beichen's eyes were filled with calmness when he heard how the people of the sect were uneasy. As soon as he had left, they had already made trouble. He did not know whether or not little master would wait for the sovereign to come back. Then the situation would be much better. Di Beichen, go on, Bailey Hongzhuang said, I am not in danger at the school. You do not have to worry about me. The Jiupin Ziji is very important, you have to find a way to get it. She believed that Di Beichen had a way to deal with the problems in the sect. After all, Di Beichen was silent for 3 years, but he had only spent a few months to settle everything. Now that he left for a few months, what kind of waves could they not already have brewed? She is very worried about the Jiupin Ziji. These were the treasures that could not be found easily, naturally they could not let it go. Di Beichen looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang, worry was evident within his eyes. Is it better if you are coming with me? He was worried about leaving Bailey Hongzhuang here. In case of danger he would be unable to help her. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment, but shook her head. A soft smile was on her lips. I cannot walk into your world with my current strength. When I am stronger I will travel with you all over the world. She understood that with the status of Di Beichen, those who wanted to deal with him could not be simple characters. If Di Beichen went out alone, then he would be invincible, however if she followed, then she would become the weak spot of Di Beichen. She was naturally unwilling to become a weakness for him. What she wanted was to stay by his side, and be able to face the world without fearing any threats and challenges. She was not willing to rely on constantly being protected by Di Beichen. This was her pride as the owner of the Bailey family, the pride in her heart. Her pride made it impossible for her to just become an accessory, instead of relying on her own strength to achieve her goals. She believed it would not be long before Han Xiling would lose all sense of pride in front of her. Because she would completely smash the confidence of the practitioners who were originally proud in front of her. When Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang he saw her unyielding soul. It was her pride, fierce and strong, firm and determined. If Bailey Hongzhuang had declined for any other reason, he might have refused, however the reason she declined was this, so he could not find any excuse to refuse her. Because of the pride of Bailey Hongzhuang he could only give up. As long as he loved her, he would never let her suffer. He knew his own lady's strength. The only times she was not outstanding were when she intentionally underperformed. He believed that it would not be long before she would proudly stand by his side. He Mu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with amazement. He had long since known that she was not an ordinary girl, but now he understood that it was because of this that his little master had been so smitten with her. When he heard the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, he could not help but feel a sense of admiration towards her. Originally he had worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would have dragged down Di Beichen's speed of advancement, but now he knew that this was not the case at all. From the few words of Bailey Hongzhuang he could feel her ambition. Good, Di Beichen placed a hand on her shoulder. I will settle the things at Tiangang and get my hands on the Jiupin Ziji after which I'll return to you. The deep black eyes were staring straight at Bailey Hongzhuang, as if Di Beichen wished to imprint her whole figure into his heart. This was just a short separation, he would return to her soon. However, nowadays he was not at all willing to be separated from Bailey Hongzhuang. He knew that she would understand his worries. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled lightly and her lips were pulled into a gentle smile. I will wait for your return. The practice at Kanglin College was not helpful to Di Beichen, he was only there for the sake of accompanying her. Hongzhuang, you're back. Before Bailey Hongzhuang had the time to open her door, the door opposite had already been opened and Xia Jiqing stuck out her head, her expression filled with excitement. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled gently as she nodded her head. When did you come back? There is still some time left of the vacation. I returned 2 days ago. I was simply too bored at home, so when I saw the chance I returned to the college, Xia Jiqing laughed. While speaking with Bailey Hongzhuang, she looked back, but she found that she had not even seen a trace of Di Beichen and could not help but wonder, Hongzhuang, did he not return with you? She knew how close those two were. If Bailey Hongzhuang was here, then Di Beichen should definitely also be here. He had some things he needed to deal with and left first. I guess that he will return after a few days. Xia Jiqing's face lit up in understanding. You are right, with the status of Di Beichen, he has a lot he needs to deal with. Now the identity of Di Beichen was no longer a secret. As the young lord of Tiangang sect he had to be very busy. For the sake of accompanying Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen must have suffered a lot of pressure. After talking a bit with Xia Jiqing, Bailey Hongzhuang returned to her room. As of now, she had been studying inscriptions for a while. Although she had practiced many times within the chaos ring together with the old man, she had actually still not created an inscription. Taking advantage of the time she had now, it was the best chance to draw an inscription. Practice makes perfect, and every inscription artist needed a large quantity of materials. It was just like an alchemist's also need to be cultivated under the use of numerous herbs. Only after many times would they gain an understanding of the profession. This kind of understanding couldn't be ignored by others. It was an understanding of how many and how much of each material to add, and for an inscription artist, it was especially impotent to know how much force to add. If you had this kind of understanding when writing inscriptions, then the success rate would become much bigger. Bailey Hongzhuang had bought some materials for inscriptions before. The inscriptions she wanted to draw were not difficult and thus the materials were easy to find. Inscriptions were constructed by different lines and shapes. Different patterns had different effects, and when they were placed on top of one another the effects would change. In the eyes of others, it may be that the patterns were difficult to understand and it was hard to see the difference between them, only the inscriptionists would be able to understand what these patterns meant. Yet just as the alchemists' formulas were confidential, the inscriptionists would not draw their inscriptions while others were looking. Once the inscription was formed only a simple pattern would be visible, not even all the structures of the inscription could be seen. Inscriptions were extremely tiresome to make. It took a long time to create an inscription. If there was a problem while making the inscription, one needed to redo it from the start. Bailey Hongzhuang had followed the old man's methods for a very long time in order to master it. The materials required for the different inscriptions were not the same, at the same time, the better materials, the better the inscription's effect became. After creating the red ink and the inscription liquid, she prepared the inscription paper and began drawing. She was not planning on copying the intricate inscriptions this time. She felt that the inscriptions that the old man was teaching her had reached a high level, so instead she tried something simpler. But even so, she could feel that although the level of the inscription was low, the effect was still quite outstanding. For some ordinary cultivators, as long as an inscription was placed onto their weapon, the power of the weapon would soar. One should not underestimate this assistance from the inscription. As long as the power of the weapon was improved, the combat ability of the cultivator would also be improved. Bailey Hongzhuang was calm and tranquil. She picked up her inscription pen and gently dipped it in the inscription liquid before beginning to draw. The red inscription liquid had the same color as cinnabar, but at the same time a subtle golden light shone from it. It was bright and stunning to look at. As the inscription pen touched the inscription paper, she began drawing. Bailey Hongzhuang's spirit had reached the highest levels, and all her focus was placed upon the inscription she was drawing. As an alchemist, she had always been able to concentrate. She had, at this moment in time, put all her focus onto the inscription. There was nothing else on her mind. Even before she touched the paper with the pen, she had already decided upon which pattern to draw, so she did not hesitate at all and drew it smoothly. All inscriptions needed to be fluent, and there was not allowed to be even one point where the drawing was uneven or broken. If such an occurrence happened, then the inscription would be flawed and not work. Not only this, the strength of which the pen was being used, the shaking of one's hands or uneven amounts of inscription liquid would also lead to failure of the inscriptions. Because of this, it was harder to become an inscriptionist than an alchemist. It was also because of this, that inscriptionists were even rarer than alchemists. When Bailey Hongzhuang had finished drawing, she found that there were some errors that she had not seen when she had practiced. There had been a few pauses and she had stagnated when drawing, which had resulted in the inscription being unusable. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not care about failing. Failure was the mother of success. She had prepared so many materials and was ready to fail. The second time ended in failure. The third time also ended in failure. It was not until the eighth time that Bailey Hongzhuang was finally able to draw the lines smoothly enough with the inscription pen. She found that the reasons behind her previous failures were not enough control over the pen. Chapter 628, Tianxiang Auction House. 22nd attempt was a failure. 23rd was also a failure. On the 30th attempt, Bailey Hongzhuang was once again successful in drawing an inscription. Compared to the previous success rate, it had not increased. In the end, Bailey Hongzhuang drew 3 inscriptions. Not because she was not willing to draw more, but because she had run out of inscription fluid. If she wants to continue, she has to create more inscription fluid, but in her current state it is not a good idea to continue. She has already consumed a lot of her mental power. Although creating inscriptions does not require any strength, it requires mental energy. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang stop, the 3 beasts quickly went over to her. Little Black and Little White began massaging her shoulders, while Baishir massaged her back. Bailey Hongzhuang had decided to pick up inscriptions, but she understood that it would take a long time to practice. As for the effect of the inscriptions she just drew, she is not too sure. It is better to sell them first and then understand the market. In her previous life, she did not know a lot about inscriptions. Even now she does not know anyone who practices inscriptons. Inscriptionists are simply too rare. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang went to the auction house with her 3 inscriptions. Even in Lan City were no shops selling inscriptions. The reason why she did not sell the inscriptions at the college was because it was her first attempt at drawing an inscription. She could not be sure of the effect. She does not know what the market price is like, so she can't ask for just any price. She could auction it, but many students would raise the price since she was the one auctioning it, and if the inscription was not up to standard, she would suffer in the end. So, after all this consideration, she can only choose the auction house. She had faith in the appraisers of the auction house should have some kind of understanding of inscriptons, and as to what price it was fetching at the auction, she did not care too much. When Bailey Hongzhuang went to the auction house, she wore a black cloak. She was not willing to disclose her identity. When you are new to a field, not standing out is the best action to take. Tianxiang Auction House was located in several cities in the Xinjiang mainland, and Lan City had their own Tianxiang Auction House. Bailey Hongzhuang did not hesitate to enter. She has a good impression of the auction house, and they also have a good reputation. After the appraisers saw the 3 inscriptions, their attitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang changed. The number of inscriptions are very rare. Some inscription masters directly inscribe upon a weapon, so most of the inscriptions you can find on paper are not high-level inscriptions. Even so, the inscription will still be sought after by many practitioners, and these lower-leveled inscriptions have a huge market. Every cultivator wants to improve the power of themselves and their weapons, and how many cultivators are there in Xingxian mainland? He can't even imagine it. For this reason, the inscriptions are a hot item everyone wants. Girl, what effect does your inscription have? The appraiser asked. Bailey Hongzhuang paused for a moment before she said, it is a fire attribute inscription. Once it is used, it will summon a flame and improve the ability to kill your opponents. After listening to Bailey Hongzhuang, the eyes of the appraiser brightened. This item, our auction house would like to accept. This result made Bailey Hongzhuang feel slightly helpless. She wanted to take a look at the specific effect of the inscription. Now it seemed she had to buy a weapon and try it out herself. As for her glass sword, it was naturally impossible. Even if she wanted to inscribe something onto the glass sword in the future, it had to be an excellent inscription. Using her current inscriptions on the glass sword would simply be a waste and a shame. In the meantime, she kept the glass sword close to her. When she was in the ruins she had left her mark on the glass sword, but the glass sword had not approved of her yet. Once a weapon reached a certain level it would gain a spirit, and it would choose its owner for itself. Even if you were to use the sword, if the sword had not acknowledged you as its owner, then it was impossible to exert all the strength of the glass sword. After handing over the inscription to the appraiser, Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the college. This inscription was of the simplest kind, and thus she did not expect the price of the inscription at the auction to be high. What she wanted to know was the effect of the weapon, and after the owner made a move, she believed that she would see it. As long as the person was from Lan City, she believed that she would get to hear about it. After returning to her dormitory, Bailey Hongzhuang went into closed-door cultivation. She placed all her mental energy on making inscriptions, and when the mental energy was used up she began cultivating. When her mental power had been restored she would continue drawing inscriptions, using all her time on making inscriptions or cultivating. Every time her mental energy was exhausted, she would become pale, and there would be a sense of loss in her mind. However, Bailey Hongzhuang found that during this process, her mental strength had actually improved. Her mental strength was already very strong when compared with normal people, so it is very difficult to improve her mental strength. She did not think that this method would prove to be helpful. After this, Bailey Hongzhuang was even more focused, she became too busy to be tired. During this practice session, her inscriptions also improved a lot. As she was drawing the same inscription, she no longer cared about the effect of the inscription, what she wanted was to grasp the feeling of drawing it. There was a difference between alchemy and inscription. Every time an alchemist refined a new pill, there would be a huge challenge. Even if it was refined for the first time, it might not be successful the second time. Inscriptions were different however. As long as the inscription master mastered the method of drawing an inscription, the success rate would instantly increase. One success, even if the next inscription was another version, as long as the structure of the inscription was understood, the success rate of drawing another inscription would also increase. Therefore, it was harder to become an inscriptionist, but when you mastered the essence it became much simpler. Unfortunately, this was the most difficult thing and also the reason that many couldn't become inscriptionists. 3 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang received the money from the Tianxiang auction house. Looking at the money, Bailey Hongzhuang was also slightly stunned. It seemed that the inscription was extremely popular on the market. Her inscription was a simple inscription but it still had fetched a very good price. Unfortunately, the person who bought the inscription that Bailey Hongzhuang had made was not from the city. As soon as he had purchased it, he left Lan City. This result made Bailey Hongzhuang feel slightly helpless. She wanted to take a look at the specific effect of the inscription. Now it seemed she had to buy a weapon and try it out herself. As for her glass sword, it was naturally impossible. Even if she wanted to inscribe something onto the glass sword in the future, it had to be an excellent inscription. Using her current inscriptions on the glass sword would simply be a waste and a shame. In the meantime, she kept the glass sword close to her. When she was in the ruins she had left her mark on the glass sword, but the glass sword had not approved of her yet. Once a weapon reached a certain level it would gain a spirit, and it would choose its owner for itself. Even if you were to use the sword, if the sword had not acknowledged you as its owner, then it was impossible to exert all the strength of the glass sword. Bailey Hongzhuang had inherited the inheritance of Baiqing in the ruins, and Baiqing was very generous towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Not only did she give her best martial arts technique to Bailey Hongzhuang, she also helped he erase the mark that had belonged to her on the glass sword. Baiqing was a strong person and the glass sword was used by her all year round. The mark on it was deeply etched into the sword. If she relied on her own strength and wanted to completely remove Baiqing's imprint, then it would be hard. If she was Bailey Hongzhuang from before the rebirth it would have been no problem for her at all to remove the mark, but now her strength was much weaker. With Baiqing's help, there was now a tacit understanding between herself and the sword. She also felt more comfortable with the sword and she knew it would become her weapon in the future. Knock, she suddenly heard a knock on her door, and Bailey Hongzhuang put away the things she used for inscriptions before she opened it. Outside, Xia Jiqing was looking at her with worried expression. Hongzhuang, are you trying too hard? How long do you plan on being in closed-door cultivation? Since she came back from Fengbo country, she had been in retreat every day long. She knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was in closed-door cultivation, but this was too long, was it not? When she entered she would not come out at all. Although Bailey Hongzhuang had always done her very best, this was too exaggerated, was it not? Hongzhuang, you never come out these days. Jiqing is very worried about you. Bai Junyu also appeared. If it wasn't because we sometimes heard movements inside, we would have thought that you had fainted. When practitioners went into closed-door cultivation, it could be long or short. Some of those with abnormal strength even spent decades, but with their current strength, it was really a long time that Bailey Hongzhuang had been closed up. If it was him, he was afraid that being in the room for so long would kill him. There was a slight smile on the face of Bailey Hongzhuang. She had always been serious about what she did. In her eyes, the closed-door cultivation was not long, but in the eyes of Xia Jiqing it was indeed far too long. Is everything all right since you are looking for me? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Xia Jiqing nodded her head. The headmaster asked us special enrollment students to go to the principal's office. There should be something to announce. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang understood instantly. The principal would only call for them if there was something to announce. She just didn't know what it was this time. Hongzhuang, when you went into closed-door cultivation this time, Dongfang Yu came to ask about you, but everyone was worried that you were in a dangerous position so we dared not bother you. Today I heard sounds from inside so I dared knock on your door. Xia Jiqing sighed as she looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. She heard that Gong Shaoqing was a cultivation madman, but now it seemed as if the madness of Bailey Hongzhuang was no less than Gong Shaoqing. Sorry about worrying you. There was a slight bit of apology in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. During this time she had devoted her heart to inscriptions and had not cared about anything else. Only the time she went out to sell the inscription at the auction, it seemed that they all thought she had gone out to buy dry food. As long as nothing is wrong, Xia Jiqing smiled brightly. Clean up and we'll go to the principal's office. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly freshened up and walked out of the dormitory. Here she saw Dongfang Yu, Gong Shaoqing and the others had all gathered and were waiting for her alone. You're all here, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. When they saw her, there were smiles on their faces, but there was no shortage of worry in their eyes. Hongzhuang, you were in retreat for so long, everyone were worried you had an accident. Dongfang Yu walked to the side of Bailey Hongzhuang. A pretty and youthful face was filled with some concern. Bailey Hongzhuang gently waved her hand. Don't worry about me, I am used to going into closed-door cultivation, so I stayed in the room for too long without realizing it. Hearing this, everyone was somewhat stunned and then they could not help but laugh helplessly. The closed-door cultivation of Bali Hongzhuang made them worried and sad. If she retreated often, wouldn't that? Everyone looked at one another and saw that the worry had not dissipated from the other's eyes. They had been friends with Bailey Hongzhuang for a while, but they had never seen her go into such a retreat before. They had already heard from Xia Jiqing that Di Beichen was not at the college because of something back at the Tiangang sect. They all know the identity of Di Beichen, and Han Xiling is definitely not a simple character. At the ruins, Han Xiling already expressed her attitude. They were afraid that Han Xiling would go between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen and that their relationship would much more complicated. When Bailey Hongzhuang mentioned this matter to Xia Jiqing, it was not taken serious. However, now that she had been so desperate in closed-door cultivation, it could only be connected to Di Beichen. It was not only Xia Jiqing who thought like this, Dong Fangyu and the others were thinking the same. You're fine, that's all that matters. Let's go to the principal's office. Dong Fangyu smiled and held the hand of Bailey Hongzhuang, only thinking about how it was possible for him to make her happier. Xia Jiqing nodded her head. Let's go, otherwise they would have to wait for us. As soon as the voice fell, they made their way towards the principal's office. On the way, the feelings of Bailey Hongzhuang felt different from before. What the difference was, she could not pinpoint, she could only feel a slight change. She felt a bit strange. Soon everyone arrived at the principal's office. President Ren Tianxiong and the vice principal Huan Chuyu were both there. After seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and all the others had arrived, the faces of the principal and the vice principal both showed a smile. Principal, vice principal, they greeted them. Ren Tianxiong's face held a slight smile. Today I called you here because I have something to tell you. Everyone's eyes gathered on Ren Tianxiong's body. They already knew that he had to tell them something, but none of them knew what it was. Does anyone here know about Lingyin College? Ren Tianxiong slowly asked. Hearing the question, a strange color appeared on the faces of the people present. The name of Lingyin College was one they had naturally heard about before. However, they did not understand why he was asking this question. Bailey Hongzhuang also had a certain understanding of the Lingyin College. When she had been recruited by Fu Hongba and Lu Huaiyan, they had told her a bit about the colleges on the Xingxian mainland. The Kanglan College and the Lingyin College were the same, as in both places existed to train cultivators. However, Lingyin College had a much more resounding reputation than Kanglan College. Amongst the colleges, it was the best of the best. The Lingyin College is more practical. If the college was independent, then there was no bond that bound the cultivator. The college would support the geniuses in doing what they wished for after finishing their time at the college. Because the school was originally established to help talented young cultivators, they would let the geniuses decide for themselves. However, now that the Lingyin College had gone under the banner of the Qing dynasty, people who studied at the Lingyin College would be expected to join the Qing dynasty upon finishing their studies. In this situation, she could not say who was right, but she respected Ren Tianxiong for being able to stick with the original purpose of the Kanglan College. This is not the most important. Ren Tianxiong waved his hand. The three colleges have always had a tournament. It used to be once every 5 years, but this time it was moved ahead of schedule. When the words were said, it was as if everyone's expression changed slightly. So they were the ones who would participate in the competition between the three colleges? This time you even surpassed the children from martial arts families when you seized the ancient heritage in the ruins. Therefore the name of our college is spreading like a wildfire. Many practitioners arrive and wants to become members of the Kanglan College. Such a big movement, it is impossible to hold back, and thus they decided to hold the college tournament in advance. Ren Tianxiong sneered. He knew what the two other colleges were planning. Amongst the three colleges, Lingyin College and Beihai colleges had already agreed, so even if he disagreed it would be pointless. This time, the college tournament will be held at Lingyin College. I am going to let you go to the competition. What do you think? Ren Tianxiong's eyes landed on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. The strength of these special enrollment students was undoubtedly the strongest amongst his college. If you wanted to do good at the tournament, you must naturally send them. Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at each other, but they did not refuse. It would be a great help to them to go to the Lingyin College and see the strong practitioners. Lingyin College was so powerful that they would to be able to gain something from the Lingyin College practitioners. If you rank in the tournament, you would become famous. Every college tournament could bring people to the top. Once they had achieved a ranking, their status would rise and even some forces would be happy to extend an invitation to them. Therefore the college tournament was highly anticipated by many students. There should have been 2 years until the next college tournament, and they thought they might not be at the college at that time. That it had been moved forward was simply as if meat pies had fallen from the sky. Bailey Hongzhuang also wanted to see the other 2 colleges. Recently she had been practicing, but there had been no rival. If she could meet someone who could fight against her at the college exchange, then she was also happy. "We are willing," all of them answered in unison. When listening to their answer, Ren Tianxiong smiled. "I hope that you can achieve good results in this college tournament. This time, not only is there a strength test, there is also an alchemist test. Lu Qingyue, you should be prepared." Lu Qingyue nodded her head. After returning from the ruins, she had decided on her future goals. She had decided to put all her energy into refining medicinal herbs and pills. Instead of focusing on martial arts and refining, if she just focused on one, she would have better results in the future. Please do not be too happy. This time in the ancient ruins, we from the Kanglin College has stolen the show. Lingyin and Beihai College suddenly suggesting the tournament now, it is likely they will go together against us. You should be mentally prepared. Huan Chuyo's face was a bit ugly. This tournament felt a bit like the Feast of Hongmen. When hearing the worried words, everyone had a dignified expression on their faces. The meaning of Huan Chuyo's words were easy to understand. The possibility of such a Feast of Hongmen was not small. They should not be too optimistic. We understand. The crowd nodded their heads and they all mentally prepared themselves. Although they didn't know what cards the Lingyin and the Beihai College were holding up their sleeves, they could only prepare for the situation at hand when it happened. Seeing that everyone had realized and started changing their minds around, Huan Chuyu nodded his head in relief. His biggest concern was that these students participated in the tournament and was destroyed by their own self-confidence. This kind of thing had happened before. As a cultivator, self-confidence is extremely important. But if you were overly arrogant, you would destroy your future path. That situation would be terrible. All of you, go and prepare. We will leave Kanglin College after 3 days. Yes, the students left the principal's office, but their mood was complicated. Everyone was thinking about what to do next. In my opinion, Lingyin and Beihai College will definitely make a move against us. Naturally they want to crush our college, Xia Jiqing said. Dongfang Yu nodded slightly. Amongst the 3 colleges, Lingyin College and Beihai College are united. Naturally they want to crush us. We must be careful. Since they suddenly proposed to hold the college tournament now, they must have a certain grasp of the victory. Gong Shaoqing's face was slightly ugly. We are going to go forward and challenge them all. To put it bluntly, the Lingyin College and the Beihai College had seen their advance and wanted to defeat them so that they could not continue there to expand. As a result, many of the students who were now flocking to Kanglin College would turn to their arms instead. Counter soldiers with arms, water with earth. Since we have no other choices, then we will advance boldly and see their move. The lips of Bailey Hongzhuang turned upwards into a smile, the bright phoenix eyes shone with a confident light. For this kind of thing, if they worry too much it would be useless. In the end they just had to fight against the students of the other 2 colleges. If it was fair and they lose, then they can only blame their own skills. But if the other party made a sinister move and she discovered it, she would never let the other party be happy. The people who were originally worried suddenly felt a bit relaxed after hearing the words of Bailey Hongzhuang. Indeed, their worry was useless. It was better to improve their strength in this process. When they were in the duels they could lean more. After returning to the room, Bailey Hongzhuang began preparing something that might be used later. Last time she bought a lot of herbs from Ji Wenbin, she also took some equipment from him. Some things, they might not look like they were useful on normal days, but they could play a decisive role at the crucial moment. Just as they have dealt with Yi Hucheng in the past, these things were best to have prepared. In the remaining 2 days, Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating in the cultivation tower. During this time, she was not far from breaking through into the second step of the Red Realm. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others gathered at the entrance of Kanglin College. Ordinary students noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other people had packed their bags and were preparing to depart. Their eyes were shining with envy. This was the difference between normal students and the students from the special enrollment class. Only students who were from the special enrollment class could leave when they felt like it, while they could only spend every day practicing within the college. Normal students had to spend a year practicing at the college before they were allowed to go out. I heard that the students of the special enrollment class are going to Lingyin College to participate in the college tournament. I also heard that the tournament was suddenly moved ahead of schedule. If they can achieve good results in the tournament, their future will be bright. I thought it was 2 years away and that I still had time, but now it is suddenly moved ahead of time. The people were filled with envy and regret, but even so, they still hoped that the special enrollment students could get good grades. After all, they were all students of Kanglin College. If the students of Kanglin College achieved good results in the tournament, then they too would share the glory as members of the same college. Since everyone is here and is ready, let's go. The team leader, Huan Chuyu, was responsible for leading the students to Qing Dynasty. Lu Huayan and Fu Hongba were the mentors for the special enrollment class, so naturally they also had to go with them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded their heads slightly. The trip to the Qing Dynasty was long, and their time was tight. You start, we will follow, Lu Huayan said. Although they didn't know what is going to happen, they still wanted to see the students rely on their own strength to make it to the Qing Dynasty. On the way, Lu Huayan and the other teachers went missing. The students had free hands. The next moment, everyone started traveling on the road to the Qing Dynasty. It takes at least half a month, even when we are hurrying. The Qing Dynasty is really far away. After seeing the vice principal and the 2 mentors leaving, Bai Junyu opened his mouth. He had always been the type of person who spoke all the time. Keeping him quiet was difficult. The strength of the Qing dynasty is much stronger than the surrounding countries such as Fengbua. It is truly a hegemon with a huge territory. Even if we are on the road for half a month, we will only arrive at the border of the Qing dynasty. To reach the capital we will need a full month. Dong Fangyu looked at the crowd as he said. Then it will take us 2 months to get there. Xia Jiqing said, slightly excited. She had never been so far away since her childhood. The Qing dynasty was without a doubt the furthest away. Lu Qingyue smiled and nodded her head. The Qing dynasty is far away from our college. The same goes for the Beihai College. Amongst the 3 colleges, Lingyin is in the center. It is also due to the long distance that the tournament is only planned for every 5th year. Gong Shaoqing said. Is the tournament always being held at Lingyin College? Xia Jiqing asked, her expression betraying her confusion. Dong Fangyu shook his head slightly. No, it's not. The college tournament has a rule. The first-placed college is the one that hosts the next tournament, Dong Fangyu explained. So the last tournament was won by Lingyin College? Xia Jiqing frowned. Although she had not been to Lingyin College, she had a feeling of dislike towards it. Dong Fangyu and Gong Shaoqing looked at each other with a bit of helplessness, then they answered, not only the last time, but also the time before was won by Lingyin College. It is precisely because of this that the Kanglan College has been suppressed. It has been many years since it has been able to compete with the Lingyin and Beihai colleges. Gong Xiaoqing's eyes flashed with solemnity. We have a great responsibility during this tournament. If we lose again, Lingyin College would have won 3 consecutive tournaments. Then the reputation of our college, which has just risen, will fall back to the bottom. We have to do our best this time. Gong Xiaoqing's handsome face was serious and filled with decisiveness. He had a great feeling of belonging to the Kanglan College. Therefore he did not want to see it fall to such depths. Hearing the words, everyone nodded their heads. As a student of the college, they decided to do their best. However, in addition to us, there is also the Beihai College. Is it possible for them to win? Bai Junyu thought out loud. Since there were 3 colleges, all 3 had to fight against one another. Why did Gong Xiaoqing only consider the Lingyin College their opponents? Beihai College has already formed an alliance with the Lingyin College. Therefore they will work together to deal with us. At the beginning, our principal and the principal of Lingyin College had an argument because of Lingyin College being sponsored by the Qing dynasty. That time our college lost, and our principal had to admit that the Lingyin College was right. When the words were said, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were shocked. They did not expect such a thing had happened. At the thought of this, everyone felt heavy and that there was a burden on their shoulders. If they were to lose this time, not only would the principal lose face, he might also have to give up the values he believed in. That damned Lingyin College principal. I have not seen him yet, and I already think he is annoying. Xia Jiqing said angrily. In her eyes, although she did not have much contact with the principal, she still felt that he was a good principal. As a member of Kanglan College, how could she let her principal bow to another? In the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang all doubts were gone. It seemed that they could only win this tournament. Master, in my opinion, this time Lingyin College and Beihai College will definitely try to make a lot of problems for you, Little Black said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head slightly. Only this time, Lingyin College cannot win, and they will definitely pay for it. Next the red lips of Bailey Hongzhuang rose into a smile. The stronger the opponent, the more motivated I am to battle. I am looking forward to this. Bailey Hongzhuang and a group of 8 people rushed to the Qing dynasty. As a cultivator, whether it was energy or endurance, they were far above ordinary people. Therefore they would travel much faster than others. Finally, after rushing for half a month, they arrived at the border of the Qing dynasty. Longguang Town. Everyone walked on the streets of Longguang Town. As a border town, it was not at all deserted, instead and was actually incredibly bustling with life. People came and went and the trade was prosperous. As soon as they walked into the town, they all showed a smile on their faces. Their feeling of exhaustion was reduced. We have been resting in the forest these last 2 days and now we have arrived at a town. We can get a meal first and then find an inn to rest in. Cui Haoyan suggested. These days they have been eating dry food, no hot meals. Agreed. Everyone answered. They had been running for so long that they are tired. What's more, when resting in the wild, they could never relax their spirit. Even when they were asleep they had to be alert, however in an inn they could sleep without a worry. Everyone were hungry and just wanted to choose a restaurant where they could eat. Finally they stopped at the door to a restaurant. As they walked in, they found that the place was filled with people. It was immensely lively. We will eat here, what do you think? Cui Haoyan asked with a smile. Okay, the faces of all the students were filled with a relaxed smile. As soon as they entered the restaurant the scent of wine and food wafted into the noses of all of them. When they saw that people came in, the waiter rushed over. Dear guests, the second floor has no more space, there are only 2 tables on the first floor lobby, what would you like to do? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not care, they wanted to eat dinner, they did not care where it was. The group of 8 people sat down at the 2 tables, 4 women at one and 4 men at another. Not long after, the dishes they ordered came up, and with the signature dishes filled with flavor, everyone started to eat with their chopsticks. Starting with the fish dishes, Xia Jiqing happily smiled, having eaten dry food for so many days and finally getting a hot meal. I am really happy. Seeing the extreme happiness on the face of Xia Ziwing, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others could not hold back a smile. You can be sure that now that we have arrived in the Qing dynasty, the road should be bustling and we should not have to go hungry again. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled lightly. There was a large wilderness between the 2 countries, but now they had entered the dynasty, things were different. Especially since they were headed for the Qing dynasty's imperial city, the way would be much smoother than before. Xia Jiqing nodded her head, that's also good. I haven't washed for a few days, I feel uncomfortable. While everyone were talking, several young cultivators dressed magnificently walked into the restaurant. There were both men and women, and their temperament was extraordinary. It was obvious that they were not ordinary people. Give us an elegant room, a yellow-robed young man called out, his expression showing a bit of arrogance. When the waiter saw this, he knew that they were not good people, and he could not help but feel helpless. Dear guests, I am sorry but the rooms are all full. When he heard the words of the waiter, the yellow-robed man's brows wrinkled and he had an unpleasant look in his eyes. Then we will eat here. As they said this, they looked in the lobby and found that there was no space either, their expressions turning ugly. Dear guests, as you can see, the first floor is also full, the waiter said helplessly. I finally arrived at Longguang town, I want to have a good meal, I did not expect this place to be full. I don't want to change place again. At this time a woman in red dress amongst the people in the group spoke out. The woman's appearance was very outstanding. Her skin was white and her lips were red, but the arrogance she had in her expression ruined her beauty a little. Listening to the words of the woman in the red dress, the man in yellow robes changed his expression slightly and a smile was raised on his lips. Jinglin, you can be sure that even if there is no space, I will make it so that there is space soon. Shui Haolong, my sister is not familiar with you. At this time, the woman with purple dress suddenly made a noise and looked at the man with the yellow robe. Shui Haolang's face was a bit ugly, this Lu Jingqi was always against him and causing trouble. Shui Haolang, I am hungry, handle this matter quickly, Lu Jinglin was carefree about the entire matter. Sure, Shui Haolang smiled and nodded his head, turned to look at the waiter and said, listen well, get some tables cleared for us, otherwise I will tear this restaurant down. The waiter's face was ugly for a moment and he quickly said, dear guest, I really have no way. The other guests have not eaten their food yet, I cannot drive them away. I don't care, I only want to see the result. Shui Haolang looked proud. If he couldn't even handle this little thing then he was useless. He took a purse and placed it on the counter. When you get things done, this will be yours. Even so, the face of the waiter did not change. Dear guest, the business of this restaurant is not like that. If there is anyone willing to leave for you that's fine, but we will not chase anyone away. The people who are eating on the first floor all look at Shui Haolang, but their eyes were filled with disgust over his overbearing manner. It's a bunch of hedonistic rich kids. Every time such a young master appears it is nothing good. Is it not just being a bit stronger than others? It is not like they are so amazing, it is really annoying. This kind of hedonistic rich kid is far from good, meeting him is bad luck. The people who whispered were all ordinary people, but they had seen a lot before. These people are too unreasonable, Xia Jiqing said while frowning. Zhang Yunfeng nodded her head, from their appearance they should be cultivados. So many cultivators gathered together, and the travel-worn appearance, they should not be from Longguang town. Bailey Hongzhuang faintly glanced at Shui Haolang and the others. Zhang Yunfeng's words made her curious and she instantly understood. But instead of caring, she continued to eat. She had never been a noisy person. As long as they did not try to do anything to her, she did not care about them. Seeing the waiter's embarrassed expression, Xue Haolang was also feeling annoyed. It seems that you will not understand unless you have been taught a lesson, so you know how to behave. As soon as the voice fell, the waiter's face was white as a sheet. He could guess that these people were cultivators. He was just an ordinary person. How could he be their opponent? At this time a black-robed man walked out from behind the others and said to Xue Haolang, "Why say so much nonsense? Just drive away 2 tables of customers." The man's face was cold and there was a bit of impatience within his eyes. Obviously he was displeased with Xue Haolang and the waiter's argument. Hearing this, Xue Haolang nodded his head again and again. It was easy to see how much he respected this black-clothed man. Lu Jingqi had a smile on her face. Is it okay to drive them away together? Next, Xue Haolang and the others walked into the restaurant's lobby on the first floor. The waiter wanted to block them, but he did not have the courage. After all, he was really offended by these people. Xue Haolang and the others looked at the tables and saw who were eating. After the eyes landed on them, many felt uncomfortable, and looked away. They did not know who would be the unfortunate ones. People like Bailey Hongzhuang and her friends were still eating their meals, and when Xue Haolang's eyes landed on them there was a bit of threat contained within. Lu Jingqi's eyes fell on a purple figure in the restaurant, because she found that she was wearing the exact same clothes as her. "Sister, look at that table." Lu Jingqi looked at Lu Jinglin and pointed at Xia Jiqing. Lu Jinglin's eyes swept over Xia Jiqing and she instantly understood her sister's plan. Her sister had never liked to share anything with others, and not even someone wearing the same clothes as her. "Xue Haolang, let us sit at this table," Lu Jinglin said. Looking at the direction that Lu Jinglin was pointing, Xue Haolang saw a table with 4 women. Originally he would never have chased away 4 women, as he would be blamed of bullying. However, he had liked Lu Jinglin for a long time. He would not refuse anything she asked of him. Everyone within the lobby looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 4 girls with pity. They were really unlucky. Bailey Hongzhuang was seated with her back to the other people, but after seeing the sympathetic eyes of the other people she could easily guess what had happened. "Hongzhuang, they are coming towards us." Xia Jiqing's face was filled with anger. So many people in the lobby, but they went for them. Did they think they were easy to bully? At this time Xue Haolang's voice rang from behind Bailey Changzhuang. "We need to use this table. Go away and I will pay for your food." Xue Haolang looked proud, but then he saw the woman next to Bailey Hongzhuang, and his face could not help but change a few times. So beautiful. Even more beautiful than Lu Jinglin. Such temperament and looks, simply a goddess in every man's mind. Lu Jinglin also noticed this, her face turning ugly. Her appearance had always been praised by others, and now there was a woman who was even more beautiful than her. Oh! How generous! Xia Jiqing stood up. "Why should we go?" Xue Haolang and the others were drawn to this other woman's appearance. It was not comparable to the other woman, but it was also charming. "I told you to go, so you have to go." Lu Jingqi raised her eyebrows and her expression was filled with arrogance. "If you don't leave, don't blame us for driving you out." Bragging. Zhang Yunfeng also stood up and looked at Lu Jingqi with a glare. "You are not the only cultivator here." Next Zhang Yunfeng directly took out her sword and put it on the table. At the same time Gong Shaoqing and the others from the table next to them also stood up. They did not like to get into trouble, but they would not be bullied. When they saw Gong Shaoqing and the others also stood up, they were stunned. They thought the 4 girls at the table were alone. They had not expected the 4 men next to them to be together with them. As a result, it would become messy. Li Jingqi's face was ugly and she had not expected to pick such a large group of people. "I'll give you 3 seconds, scram." The voice of Bailey Hongzhuang was cold. This kind of person who was so arrogant, she did not need to give them even the slightest bit of face. With the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, Xue Haolang's face instantly turned ugly. Although they had 8 people, it would just be a little troublesome. Never would they have expected that this white-dressed woman with her back to them would talk about them leaving. Such courage! Lu Jingqi snorted, "Who are you to tell us to scram? We were eating here, and you ran to us for no reason, telling us to leave. That is such bad upbringing. I told you to scram, it is already giving you enough face." Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was completely cold, not having the slightest temperature. This person is not even turning around, even if it was to an ordinary person, this would be severe humiliation. This was an insult. When the words came out, Lu Jingqi and the others' faces turned colorful. This woman had a sharp tongue, they could not refute her at all. The other guests, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang, all felt that she was correct. All the people who were nervous before were now watching a great show. Xue Haolang had picked a hard bone. They just had to look at the white-clothed girl to know that they were equally important. Li Jingqi sneered in anger, "If you have the ability to face us, then do so. Are you so ugly that you don't dare turn around?" Li Jingqi had always been arrogant, so what if what she said made no sense? She was an unreasonable person, but strength was the truth. However, after hearing Lu Jingqi's words, Xia Jiqing could not help but laugh. This Lu Jingqi is really an idiot. Bailey Hongzhuang is the most attractive of them all, now she said that she was too ugly and afraid to meet people. Not only Xia Jiqing, but also Dongfang Yu and the others at the side could not help but laugh. If they said she was ugly, then no one would dare to say that they were beautiful. Next, under the gaze of Lu Jingqi and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly turned around. The beautiful face which could make cities crumble held a mocking smile. "What did you just say?" Xue Haolang took a deep breath of air when he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him. He thought that Lu Qingyue was already the best amongst women, but then when he saw this white-dressed woman he realized that there was one even more outstanding. Chapter 641, is looking for abuse all along. Xue Haolang had always thought that Lu Jinglin was a very beautiful woman. Throughout the entire Beihai College, Lu Jinglin and Lu Jingqi were very famous and many practitioners pursued them. However, the eyes of these sisters were set high, and ordinary people could not even enter their eyes. Only special enrollment students could get to know them. He had long since regarded Lu Jinglin as his goal. Although Lu Jinglin was proud, at least she was not sharp-tongued. In his view, beautiful and powerful women had the capital to be arrogant. As for Lu Jingqi, it was too troublesome and her words would not easily be forgiven. Therefore, between the sisters, he has decided on Lu Jinglin. Nowadays everyone at the college knew that he had Lu Jinglin as a goal, and that they are close usually. He was somewhat proud of this. He had never thought that the 4 women in front of him would be the same as Lu Jinglin, 2 of them were even better. Lu Jingqi saw the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and shock appeared in her eyes, before her face turned to the color of pig liver. She wanted to take the woman down, who knew she was just looking to be abused. You, Li Jingqi opened her mouth but she did not know what to say, the original arrogance had disappeared. The people who were watching could not help but laugh at this scene, it was really such an interesting situation. The waiter was feeling better. He was really annoyed with Xue Haolang and the others, but he was not their opponent. Now seeing them eating a loss, he naturally felt much better. Bailey Hongzhuang simply ignored Lu Jingqi and raised her fingers. 3. After listening to the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, Xue Haolang's face was gloomy. This white-dressed woman was destroying their face. If they left like this, then where would their faces be? 2. Dongfang Yu and the others were standing at the same place without a care. In fact, the provocation that they had been subject to had aroused their anger. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang was making them all happy. "Girl, your attitude is bad." At this time, Xiao Lanmei stood up. His eyes were focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. Within the cold eyes were a few colors. Such a beautiful woman, if she is too troublesome it is a pity. When they saw Xiao Lanmei stand up, Lu Jinglin and the others had changes in their expressions. Everyone knew the attitude of Xiao Lanmei. He would been too lazy to deal with things ordinarily, therefore on the way he rarely did anything, but they do not dare to look down upon him. Xiao Lanmei was the strongest amongst them. It was because they understood his temperament and personality that they were shocked that he suddenly stood up. Could it be that he stood up because of the white woman in front of them? Chapter 642. It is best to make friends. Thinking of this, the faces of Lu Jinglin and Lu Jingqi were ugly as they looked at one another. It is true that what we did was not correct, however we can still make it right. How about making some new friends? Otherwise if we truly move against one another, then there will be no benefits to any of us. Xiao Lanmei's face was filled with confidence. Although the other party had 8 people, they too had 8 people. Even though it was not clear how the strength of the other party was, they were all around the same age. Once they got hands-on and hurt one another, it would not become a good thing. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiao Lanmei indifferently. This guy looked sincere, but she did not forget what he had said before. This person is definitely not a soft persimmon. With the voice of Xiao Lanmei falling, the expressions of Xia Jiqing and the others changed slightly. As Xiao Lanmei said, if they truly began fighting, the result could not be guessed. However, moments after, Bailey Hongzhuang turned her back to them, sat down, and continued to eat. Xiao Lanmei's face turned ugly, and Lu Jingqi could not help but take advantage of the scene to say, "Hey, what do you mean by acting like this? He already said that we should fix it, then I will pretend that nothing has ever happened. As for being friends, everyone is different, but that's our freedom to choose." After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's behavior, all the others sat down and began eating again, not paying any mind at the others, pretending that Xiao Lanmei and his friends were heir. At the beginning, Bailey Hongzhuang was the new girl in their special enrollment class. Now after being in the ruins, Bailey Hongzhuang had already broken through to the innate realm. In the world of cultivators, strength was what determined everything. No one looked at people's age. For this reason, today Bailey Hongzhuang had slowly become their leader. All of them were convinced about her strength and ability. Xiao Lanmei's face was a bit green. For the first time when he tried to make a friend, someone refused, not even giving him any face. This made him feel immensely uncomfortable. Don't think you are something special. Xiao Lanmei wants to make friends with you and you are still unwilling. Lu Jingqi raised her voice, her eyes were filled with shock. Do you know who we are? When the words of Lu Jingqi was said, the expression of Gong Shaoqing and the others changed a bit. Previously they felt that so many young cultivators gathered together were likely coming from a college. When they heard Lu Jingqi's words, they affirmed their thoughts. So the students of Beihai College are this arrogant when traveling outside? The red lips of Bailey Hongzhuang hooked up slightly, and the smile made her resemble an evil spirit. The black eyes were shining with a cold light. Originally she just wanted to have a good meal, but because of the actions of these guys, she had lost her appetite. Beihai College. The people in the restaurant were stunned after hearing the name of Beihai College. Although Lingyin College was the best-known college within Qing dynasty, the name of Beihai College was still very good. It was a gathering place for many young geniuses. These young people actually came from Beihai College? That was an extinguished identity. When Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the expression on Lu Jingqi's face constantly changed in color. She had not expected that this white-dressed woman would be able to guess their identity right away. Chapter 643, Kenglin College's Special Enrollment Students. What was most unexpected for these students from Beihai College was not that the woman in white had accurately guessed their identity. What truly surprised them was that the woman had guessed their identity and still had such an attitude. "We are not ordinary students of Beihai College," Lu Jingqi could not help but stress. In the eyes of ordinary people, the students of Beihai College were already unreachable, but the future of special enrollment students was even brighter, not something a normal student could compare to. "Aren't you just special enrollment students? Right?" Xia Jiqing sneered. For her, Lu Jingqi was the worst of them all. In the past, Lu Jingqi had pointed her finger at them because this woman was wearing the same dress as her. She was also very proud of being a special enrollment student from Kanglin College, however she was far from as arrogant. Hearing Xia Jiqing's words, Lu Jingqi was even angrier than before. Who was this person? Daring to have such an attitude? What are you doing? Who are you? Don't you know how special it is to be a special enrollment student of Beihai College? When the voice of Lu Jingqi fell, the expression of the Beihai College's special enrollment students' faces were not looking too good. All of them were looking at Bailey Hongzhuang and he friends. As a special enrollment student they had always been respected by everyone. When have they ever heard someone provoke them like this? This tone, they have long since felt insulted. It seems they are going to fight. They are the special enrollment students of Beihai College. I don't know the identity of the white-dressed woman and her companions, but they do not have the slightest fear on their faces. If they really fight, then they will give us a good show. There were a lot of people talking, seeing such a good show was rare on normal days. They also want to know how strong the special enrollment students of Beihai College were. Gong Shaoqing and the others took out their weapons, and the contest between the cultivators has always been with real weapons. They had no intention of actually paying attention to them, but Lu Jingqi had been looking for trouble. If they continue to be patient, wouldn't they be sullying the name of their college? What's more, the students of Beihai College were their opponents, and they couldn't help but be offended. They were standing in different camps. Kanglin College, special enrollment class, Gong Shaoqing slowly announced. As soon as the words were said, Xiao Lanmei and the others were stunned. No matter what they thought, they did not think that the white-dressed woman and he friends turned out to be special enrollment students from Kanglin College. This was truly a narrow road. They were all rushing towards Lingyin College, but they had not imagined to meet each other at the border to the Qing dynasty. Kanglin College. The crowds of the restaurant were dumbfounded at the moment. The Kanglin College was equally famous, it had not lost to Beihai College at all. They did not expect the two colleges to collide like this. It was no wonder they did not give each other face. It turned out that they were representing two different colleges. Xiao Lanmei suddenly understood why Bailey Hongzhuang had such an attitude towards him. It turned out that she had already seen through their identity. Although they had not completely torn faces with each other, there were a lot of grievances between the two colleges. Thinking of this, Xiao Lanmei's face turned better. I was originally also a member of the Kanglin College, Shui Haolang sneered. He had worried about where the others came from, but after hearing that they came from Kanglin College, he felt that there was no need to worry. Chapter 644, If you have the ability, then let's go out and fight. The Kanglin College had not had good results in the last two college tournaments. Although this time, the story about the ancient ruins had spread everywhere, the college tournament was especially prepared to deal with them. Once Kanglin College collapsed once more, it would be impossible for it to lift its head in front of Lingyin College. Beihai College had already joined forces with Lingyin College some years ago, and while Kanglin College had lost, they had received some benefits. I said, who are they to think that they are so great? Turned out that they are the special enrollment students of the Kanglin College who has been doing so badly the last two tournaments. Lu Jinglin smiled smugly, but the dark eyes were flashing with a strange light. For so long, Xiao Lanmei had never paid attention to her, but in front of this white-dressed woman he changed. Xiao Lanmei was acting differently towards her, how could she not be angry? Thinking of this, Lu Jinglin naturally tried to laugh at Bailey Hongzhuang. She wants the other party to be unable to lift her head. The faces of Gong Shaoqing and the others changed a few times. Lu Jinglin's words were clearly laughing at them. Bail Hongzhuang sneered. There was an air of indifference and coldness around her as she said, as a cultivator, even if you lose you cannot be without courage. Those who only know how to flatter those who has power, will never go far. Yes. Xia Jiqing clapped her hands. You are just a dog of Lingyin College, I really don't know what you are so proud of. You are looking for death. Lu Jinglin's face changed and she immediately took out her weapon and pointed it at Xia Jiqing. Xia Jiqing was not afraid at all. She pulled out her whip and looked at Lu Jinglin without fear. If you have the guts, don't just stand there and swear. I don't have the patience for this. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had also taken out their weapons, and the two sides had reached a point where they had no other solution than to fight. If you have the ability, then let's go out and fight. The voice of Bailey Hongzhuang was very cold. They had a large number of people. If they fought within the restaurant, they would undoubtedly harm others. It was better to go out and fight it out. Come on then. Lu Jingqi screamed out loud. She had never been this angry in her entire life. She had to see just how strong this woman was. The next moment, everyone left the restaurant together. Before they left, Bailey Hongzhuang still remembered to pay for the food. Even when the waiter refused to accept the money, she still paid. The waiter was truly grateful. Bailey Hongzhuang had not only solved a big problem for him, she had also avoided damage being done to the restaurant. Such a good person was truly rare. Not only the waiter but also the other people in the restaurant nodded after seeing the scene. Although I don't know how the strength of the two colleges compare, I still think the students of Kanglan College are much better than the students of Beihai College. It was now known who said this, but everyone agreed with the person. Yes, the students of Kanglan College were far superior to Beihai College's student in terms of appearance and character. The students of Beihai College are a group of people who are just a bit talented. This kind of people were better off with no talent. In the future, if they get stronger, their strength will only be used to harm others. Shui Haolang and the others were walking out of the restaurant, and as they walked they could hear the voices of everyone and their faces were suddenly extremely ugly to behold. These people were simply calling them worthless. Chapter 645, Special Enrollment Students Fighting Hand in Hand. As soon as they had walked out of the restaurant, the cultivators from the two colleges instantly began fighting. They had to use their own strength to let the other side understand how they had to pay a huge price for offending them. Lu Jingqi instantly regarded Bailey Hongzhuang as her target. However, things were not as she had planned, and before he had time to get in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, Xia Jiqing stopped her directly. Your opponent is me. Seeing Xia Jiqing, Lu Jingqi's eyes were filled with disgust. This woman was wearing the same clothes as her, making her nauseous. I am going to beat you into a sorry state. Lu Jingqi yelled angrily. Begin fighting if you have the ability, there is no meaning in saying so much nonsense. Listening to Lu Jingqi's swear words, Xia Jiqing did not fear her at all. She had long since seen that her arrogance was far greater than her strength. She had been used to the words she said, now to teach her a lesson. Lu Jinglin rushed in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. You will regret everything you just did. She refused to let go of this woman who was being noticed by Xiao Lanmei. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wanted to fight against Xiao Lanmei. After all, she was the strongest on the team, while he should be the strongest on their team. She had not expected that Lu Jinglin would come finding her on her own. However, she didn't care who it was. The battle broke out in an instant, and everyone had their energies surging as their fists greet each other. Shockwaves of majestic volatile energy spread through the streets and the surrounding air seemed to have been compressed in an instant. The surrounding merchants had all left when they saw this scene. If they were hit, no one knew what would happen to them. Bailey Hongzhuang directly raised her white hand and her glass sword appeared in her hand. The movement of her body turned resembled that of a ghost, and she quickly appeared behind Lu Jinglin. Lu Jinglin's reaction was very fast. She was after all a special enrollment student, and she naturally had a bit of skill. Ding! The two women's swords collided and shot off sparks. Bail Hongzhuang was not holding back, she had had no opponents for a while, now that she had someone to fight she also felt happy. However, it was clear that Lu Jinglin was not an opponent for Bailey Hongzhuang. Because in just this short moment, Lu Jingli had already been defeated. Lu Jinglin had not thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was this strong. It was just a normal fight, but the pressure that Bailey Hongzhuang gave off was simply too much for her to handle. Every time she responded, she needed to rely on Yuanli to strengthen herself. On the other hand, Bailey Hongzhuang looked as relaxed as if it was nothing. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang made an attack, and Lu Jinglin's body instantly fell down. She had responded quickly, but even so she still fell down. Ha! Lu Jinglin, who landed on the ground, could not help but spurt out blood, her face turning pale. Upon seeing this, the cultivators of Beihai College glanced at one another. They had just begun fighting and Lu Jinglin was already seriously injured. The eyes of everyone can't help but land on Bailey Hongzhuang. Was this woman with the beautiful appearance really so powerful? Big sister. When Lu Jinglin was injured, Lu Jingqi had no mood to continue fighting. She quickly rushed to Lu Jinglin's side. However, there was a faint glimmer in Xia Jiqing's eyes. She was not a vegetarian, she was going to teach this annoying Lu Jingqi another lesson. The next moment, Xia Jiqing's whip flashed out. Her youthful face released a ridiculing laugh as she put away her whip, her arms wrapped around her chest, she was laughing as she watched Lu Jingqi. This kind of woman ought to be taught a lesson, otherwise she would continue to be a nuisance. Li Jingqi did not notice what happened, as she quickly went to Lu Jinglin's side. Big sister, how are you? She only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was a beautiful shell, she would never have thought that she was so strong. So strong that just a moment of face-to-face fighting had caused her sister to be hurt and vomit out blood. Lu Jinglin stared at her chest, her white palm fell on her chest, and she could only feel a burning pain that spread through her internal organs. She felt painful and uncomfortable. However, when she saw Lu Jingqi approach her, Lu Jinglin's eyes widened and she could not help but say, Jingqi, you, cough. Once again, Lu Jinglin spat out blood when she tried to talk. When she finally managed to speak again, a long time had gone by. At the same time, the eyes of all others had gathered on Lu Jingqi. Contrary to what one might expect, she was not wearing any clothes. Had she cut them off? Big sister, you are going to be okay. Lu Jingqi helped Lu Jinglin up gently. Although her personality had always been bad, she was still very concerned about her sister. Suddenly noticing something purple out the corner of her eyes, Lu Jingqi could not help but frown. Her face changed slightly. When she saw the purple clothes that were laying on the ground, she could not help but become a bit doubtful. This purple dress. Why was it laying on the ground? Why was it so familiar? Lu Jingqi could not help but stare blankly. When she noticed that Xia Jiqing was standing a bit away laughing, still dressed in her clothes, her complexion had an abrupt change. She bowed her head, just to find that her outer garments were gone, she was only wearing her inner garments. At the same time, Lu Jinglin's voice could be heard, Jingqi, your clothes. Ah! A sharp and loud scream appeared in the street as Lu Jingqi jumped up in horror. They were fighting on the street and their actions were quite loud, attracting many people to come over and watch. Hadn't she been seen by everyone? Li Jingqi quickly took out a piece of clothes from her qianquan bag and put it on. She then glared angrily at Xia Jiqing and said, you are too mean. Xia Jiqing innocently shrugged her shoulders. Everything can happen when you fight, you ought to understand this. Lu Jingqi's face was blue and she knew that Xia Jiqing was mocking her, but she could say nothing in return. You wait. I will get my revenge. As the voice fell, Lu Jingqi rushed away from the street. She had already completely lost her face, why should she continue to stay? When they saw Lu Jingqi leave, Shui Haolang and the others looked at one another. At this point, how could they fight? Shui Haolang quickly came to the side of Lu Jinglin. We will get revenge at the tournament. Anytime. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into an enchanting and ridiculing smile. The battle ended very fast. None of them had expected this. Don't be too proud. The cultivators of Beihai College all had ugly expressions, and were filled with anger. They were obviously hating Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. You don't have to go like this, we can continue to fight. Xia Jiqing's face was filled with a smug smile. She was acting as if the special enrollment students of Beihai College were unyielding, while in fact the only strength they had was to talk big. Xiao Lanmei glanced deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang, but he never spoke. After a moment he left together with the others from Beihai College. Right, that was so awesome. Xia Jiqing tuned her body around, her face was filled with excitement. The expression of Lu Jingqi was simply wonderful, I had not expected it to be so amusing. Ha, even Zhang Yunfeng could not help but laugh out loud. Jiqing, you are simply a genius, I don't know how you could think of such a method. It was a flash of inspiration. Must be divine might. Xia Jiqing raised her eyebrow. Now Lu Jingqi must really hate you, Lu Qingyue said emotionally. Xia Jiqing just shrugged her shoulders when she heard what she said. She hated me anyway, I was fated to be hated by her. Everyone nodded their heads. It was as Xia Jiqing was saying, the students of Beihai College hated them, but they did not care about it at all. Even if they had not offended them now, they would have done so when they arrived at Lingyin College. This was also a chance to explore their strength. Gong Shaoqing slowly said, the strength of that Xiao Lanmei is not simple at all. He and Xiao Lanmei battled for a short while and he could feel that the latter had never exerted his full strength. He should be holding back intentionally. Listening to the words of Gong Shaoqing, the faces of the others turned solemn. Beihai College was one of the 3 colleges, it would naturally not be bad. Even though we fought, I am afraid that it is impossible to see the true depths of our opponents. They hid themselves deeply, just as we kept our cards hidden. Bailey Hongzhuang said gently. However, what they have been doing was not only themselves who noticed, also the tutors of the 2 colleges had observed the battle that unfolded in front of them. As long as their mentors were present, they would never get to understand the true depth of the other party. Everyone nodded their heads. What Bailey Hongzhuang said made sense. You are right, but now we have a better understanding of the team from Beihai College, that is a good result, even though we did not get to finish eating. Zhang Yunfeng walked beside Xia Jiqing and gave her a thumbs up. Jiqing, what you did before really made me happy, Xia Jiqing chuckled and noted that Lu Jingqi was so arrogant in front of us, let's see if she can be proud in front of me next time. Everyone must be tired, let us find an inn to rest at, Dongfang Yu suggested. Good idea, the crowd walked down the street before they found an inn where they entered. Dear guests, would you like to rest in our inn? The shopkeeper asked with a smile on his face. They were a border city, so although business was always booming, he had not expected to get 2 big groups of guests in one day. This way, their inn could be filled completely. Dongfang Yu nodded his head, yes, do you have 8 rooms available? There is. The shopkeeper nodded his head again and again, there is exactly 8 rooms left, I will bring you to them. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.